he fell in love and he had a wife, but it turned out his wife was a ghost.
Actual human being in the actual real world is much more terrifying than the horror movies.
Dark side there for real, guys. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to the end of this episode. You're like, woo, horror, yay. I'm like, oh my God. Welcome, podcast kitten, to this Cathy Cat. Cat with a beard. Hello. Welcome to a spooky episode of Cat with Beard.
I thought you started a new introduction. This is just what you did now. It's like you were playing an invisible piano with one hand.
No, this is this is ghostly ghostness. I'm like, ooh, I'm a ghost. You're clearly not a ghost. You still...
Not me!
Nope.
I'm loving real life. Oi!
No, I'm also very real, but I'm trying to... This is our Halloween special.
Halloween's on its way!
Get with the program. Halloween special.
Halloween's on its way!
The energy here is very different.
We're talking today about some horror manga.
And I am scared of horror, so this is another episode in which I'm going to be terrified.
Generally, I am as well. I'm generally scared of a lot of things, to be frank.
But I wouldn't think so, though.
No, well, look. Like, yeah, especially all this, horror and whatnot, the supernatural type, all that kind of, the ghosts and so forth. I went through a phase when I was younger of being particularly terrified of all of it, to be frank. Mm-hmm. And I'll explain. It's because at the time, I trained very heavily in martial arts, and there was a day at university when we were telling ghost stories and whatnot. I had a strange kind of realization of, I kind of said to myself, hang on a minute, if a human attacks me, I know exactly what to do, and I'm well prepared for it. But if a ghost attacks me, I don't know what to do at all. And so then I got really paranoid and terrified of ghosts for a while. And so generally speaking, I don't like ghost stories. I won't watch ghost films and so forth. I'll only watch any kind of horror thing if it's not supernatural in any way. Okay. I can't handle it.
You wouldn't think so, strong, muscular Ladybeard.
Well, yeah, but once a friggin' ghost shows up, what am I going to do?
Yep. I'm just generally scared of everything, especially Japanese horror, and we're actually going to talk about this time. Well, Japanese horror is different from, for example, American horror.
Yeah, it's less about a story a lot of the time, and more about just a feeling. We're just going to feel generally uneasy.
And eerie.
It's kind of really the thrust of it. Let's just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and apparently uncomfortable for enjoyment. I don't quite understand that concept. I just feel uncomfortable, and then I don't want to see anything of it anymore.
To me, it also sounds strange. Why would you just feel uncomfortable to feel uncomfortable? But, there's someone here who loves feeling uncomfortable, and that is Shiori.
Hello.
Shiori's a pro Japanese horror. Say hi, Shaz.
Hello, I'm a huge horror fan.
So tell us the appeal of feeling just generally uncomfortable.
It's just so fun. I mean, in my opinion, like an actual human being in the actual real world is much more terrifying than the horror movies.
But we're going to talk about that in a moment. My voice is already very small, but a lot of the Japanese horror is kind of real life mixed with something supernatural, something that would make you feel uncomfortable in real life or kind of wrong or uneasy. And that's why it goes under your skin like
self-soothing.
I'm self-soothing, but I'm going to rock myself if this goes any more scarier than that. Oh my goodness.
So let's go into the history of Japanese horror manga. A lot of this sprung from both Japanese folklore and also from like the post-war anxieties of the Japanese people in general. What's wrong?
I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to the end of this episode. You're like, woo, horror, yay. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to get so uncomfortable.
Well, let me put it
Feel
like
the chill with me.
Do you want to talk about it being, or you're like, hey, it's horror time? Which one's going to get you through this more easily?
We all have different coping mechanisms for fear, apparently, here.
So a lot of supernatural phenomena, a lot of psychological phenomena as well. Traditional ghost stories or kaidan went back to the Edo period, and they were a big influence on the whole thing originally. But post-war manga really began with your mate, Osamu Tezuka.
Okay, everyone kind of has heard of Osamu Tezuka sooner or later. And what I find interesting is that horror manga was not just horror for the sake of horror. It generally was kind of connected as a start with detective kind of period pieces, especially in the 1950s. Yeah, detective kind of came together with that.
Okay.
So the popularity of detective manga actually then influenced horror.
Well, I guess if there's some supernatural thingamajig going on, you got to get to the bottom of it, don't you? You got to figure out what's happening.
Figure
you
it
gotta
out.
Detect.
But in most cases, you can never figure it out because it's the unknown, uneasy.
Yeah, exactly. It's who knows what's going on.
Even in shoujo manga in 1957, they started releasing shoujo manga with like horror themes. So surprisingly, the horror genre boomed during that time. But it really, really took off in the 1960s with the artist that did Kazuo Umezu, who did The Drifting Classroom.
Dude, tell you what, we have a photo of this here. This thing is called The Drifting Classroom. There's a boy being poked in the stomach by a giant pencil, and he's floating around a mist world of giant protractors and rulers.
I mean, already, this is too math. This is like every math nightmare you can ever have, plus Alpha having a test on the next day that you haven't studied for.
I was going to say, just putting me in the classroom is already a horror story, but now you're going to poke me with huge pencils, have floating protractors. It's geometry hell is what it is.
So it's also, Umezu's work is often like psychological horror mixed with grotesque. So that kind of set the stage for then the pieces that came later, because around 1960, there was a publication of horror short stories called Yo Kiden. And it featured the first appearance of Kitaro. Kitaro! We might have heard about Kitaro before. Kind of now a very famous kind of anime sometimes as well.
Spooky Kitaro, Gegege no Kitaro. I dubbed that.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, I was Nezumi Otoko.
Were you scared when you dubbed that?
Well, I was concentrated. Yeah, sometimes. Tell you what, yeah, I was Nezumi Otoko. I was the rat man in that show. And I remember there was one... it doesn't matter.
But you were a bit scared.
I actually wasn't scared at all. I was actually moved deeply by one episode where he fell in love and he had a wife, but it turned out his wife was a ghost, and so she disappeared back into the nether realm, and then he was heartbroken, and that was actually a heartbreaking episode of
There's a lot around that. If you think about like Yuki-Onna and a lot of stories where like the woman turns out to be some sort of supernatural creature, good or bad, and then she has to leave or go back to the moon or whatever. There's a lot of that. Some with her like being something special and then disappearing forever.
Which also sort of says something about the national psychology on a certain level, doesn't it? You have your one, she's wonderful, she turns up, finally you found a good woman, and then she's gone from your life forever.
And then in the West instead we have witch hunts. So I don't know how that connects, but very different things that we tell our kids about or tell folk tales about.
So psychological horror.
So yeah, what makes Japanese horror different? A lot of it is very psychological, and I like to kind of compare that if you think of The Ring. There's not a lot of blood. There's not a lot of killing, but you are terrified for the entire movie, and maybe only one person dies, if at all. But you're terrified.
The most action-packed thing that happens is someone goes and then falls down dead. Like, that's the extent of the action.
But the build of it, like the psychology and mental state, like they really play on like anxieties, fear, and maybe insanity as well of like some of the characters. So it makes you just uncomfortable, and like it's, you know, it takes your mind, I think, almost a bit dark places, some of them do.
Yeah, and like we have here in our notes that a lot of Western horror is more about kind of gore and action and these kinds of things going on with the kind of, you know, the shock factor. Whereas Japanese horror is more just slowly just you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's also like topics that people can relate with better, like in a way of like isolation, trauma, existential dread, like stuff that kind of resonates with humans, I guess, more than just randomly like mass murderer running around with a knife.
How do you feel about existential dread, Cathy Cat?
Existential dread. Every day when I look at my taxes, existential dread.
Yeah, the Japanese tax demon. That's the biggest horror story in our lives.
That's why you hire yourself a tax consultant.
So here's an example. Zashiki-Onna, the woman in the room.
Sorry.
What happened?
The Zesty-Onna?
I didn't say zesty.
It sounded like you said zesty, like the fruity one.
Oh, I was riffing. Cathy Cat just totally destroyed my riff right now. The Zashiki-Onna. We're going to cut this. We're going to leave this in. This could be fine to just leave in.
The last
we
episode,
just ruined
you
the whole vibe.
You called me in one of the other episodes. You called me for my pronunciation of grape wine. Yeah. Now I'm catching you for the Zesty-Onna. The zesty, fruity woman. No, actually, it's Zashiki.
That's what I said.
That's totally what he said. So, Zashiki-Onna, the woman in the room.
I am a victim of abuse and existential dread.
You probably did not say Zesty-Onna, but that caught me out on... anyways, it's not the fruity
Well,
woman.
that ruined the whole horror vibe we had going, but continue.
I needed that laugh to get rid of tension. So it's a horror manga by Minetaru Mochizuki. It's a university student. Hiroshi, I think, if I read what's it? Hiroshi. And there is this mysterious, unsettling woman one night that just appears at his door. She asks for someone that doesn't live there, and then slowly she becomes obsessed with him and begins stalking him. So this is actually, because it's so true, it could actually happen. I think that's why it's also scary in a different way.
We've got it.
Human scary way.
Shiori brought it. Shiori's got it. Shiori brought it right here. I was going through it earlier, and yeah, this chick, man, he just shows up, and she's like, hey. And he was like, all right, see you later. She's like,
she spies
then she turns up
on
again,
him.
turns up at work.
She follows him.
Just, all right, it quickly gets excessive. And it turns out he's trying to go see his female accomplice, and she turns up again. She's like, and I was like, then she haunts the girlfriend, and just the whole time, just,
Oh God, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. The way they also, like, first she starts with a semi-normal face, but then her face gets just more and more grotesque. She picks fights with other people. She gets aggressive, and she follows him, spies, invades his space.
Here, look, she's getting kicked in the gut.
There's some sort of fighting and crying, and it's just like just the insanity of her. But you also, manga explores like themes of paranoia, isolation, fear of the unknown, because you still kind of don't know what is actually going on with this woman.
Yeah, and then at the end of the story, there's no real resolution of who she is or what she was doing the whole time or why she was there. It's just, and then that's it.
It kind of uses the human innate fear of being watched and pursued by someone you like, something or someone you can't control that. And they're just, starting to freak out everyone, your whole environment. And this is almost, it makes it so uncomfortable because that could happen and has happened to famous stars in Japanese society as well. So there's a lot of people who in the entertainment industry have problems with that. So I guess it's playing it very close to home for a lot of people. So it's something probably everyone can relate to.
Yeah, and a bit of a stalk. We can all a bit of a stalk.
Hey, don't do that.
Don't stalk. Oh, that's a Cat with Beard public service announcement. Don't stalk.
It's not a good idea ever. Ambiguity of the supernatural.
Yeah, so now this is the thing. As we say, the story ends and it's just, and that happened. There's no real conclusion. It's just... And this is how a lot of them end, right? These supernatural ones.
That, and also sometimes it's just something is there that is not explained and you don't understand. Because in the Western way, it's usually, it's because this happened to here.
Satanic curse under the basement.
You get an explanation, right?
We have
feels
a thing,
good.
Throw some salt over there, that'll get rid of it somehow.
There is a reason. Like, for example, it used to be a graveyard and that's why the dog comes back. Or this used to be a hanging side of this and that's why this happens. And then you do maybe something and you can resolve it, or you can kind of tame the ghost, which they've done really well in The Ring, because you expect from the Western view that, okay, the Western version of the Ring, sorry. In The Ring, you expect, okay, now we've taken her out of the well, now we've done the good, right thing in the Western way, this is where the show is over. But it's a Japanese horror, and she does not forgive, and she wants people to see the video so she can curse people again and again and again, and everyone sees the video, so you don't calm her down. So it's the unexplainable, and you can't reason with that kind of fear of it. It loses, I think what it gives you is a lack of control over the situation. There's no explanation, something supernatural just happens, and you can't control it, you gotta play by their rules or not at all.
One of the things that Shiori was saying earlier is part of the appeal of this style to the Japanese is the fact that Japan is such a natural disaster-rich nation. And so this is kind of just what it is to be Japanese. You can spend your whole life building a business or a family or something, then just for no explanation, like an earthquake can come or a typhoon or something, and now it's gone. Just... That's just happened now.
And I think also a part of it maybe comes also from the belief in that there's lots of different spirits and yokai, right? And they're just there. And they have a different nature from a human nature. You can't explain them the same way that a human functions. They have different ways how they act. And you can't explain it, you can't understand it. It's just the weird, the eerie, the supernatural. And there is no soft explanation and, path to it or out of it. So a lot of those stories actually end without any resolvements.
Yeah.
Lots of questions, and the horror lingers on. Because you don't get that sweet, Western resolve. I mean, generally in American horror movies, you bury whatever the guy in the ground, and then maybe at the end the hand comes out, and you're like, oh, it's not over, kind of. But it's not as unresolved, because you at least had the first resolve, but it's not as unresolved as a lot of Japanese horrors.
And it's just, man, you just keep living in discomfort.
I'm just...
Sure, you have anything to add at this point about your joy of discomfort?
Yes, I think the only thing I can add is there is no reason why it occurs at this almost most of the time. In for example, in Western horror movies, you sometimes go into abandoned house and then you touch the cursed object or anything something you do something wrong and that triggered the ghost to get upset and then do something bad to you. In Japanese horror, especially horror mangas, it's not the case. You just walk on the street and then suddenly you see something weird and something strange and now you're in trouble.
Well, that's just life in Japan, isn't it? It's just
you might
down the street, now there's a man dressed as a giant baby and now he's just standing next to you. And now this is what your day is from this point onwards,
I'm not sure how to follow that
reflects
up.
on Japanese life well. Let's keep going.
Sure how to follow that out. But I think it makes it realistic because you might just on the street bump into the wrong person and you already have trouble, without knowing. Random person coming up to you, something random happening. That makes it actually more realistic, I guess. Not everyone has touched a cursed object and that's why weird stuff happens. Some people just were unlucky, wrong time, wrong place kind of scenario.
Well, that's fair enough. That's true. Seeds of Anxiety.
It's one of our example mangas here. It's from Masaki Nakayama. So he has a collection of short, unsettling stories that explore the concept of everyday fears and everyday anxieties. Boy, fun.
So here's one. Boy is sitting in class. He sees someone fall off the roof.
Behind him.
He's like, what the... someone just fell off the roof. But he goes out there. There's no one there, no corpse and whatnot. And he tells everyone, oh, someone just fell off the roof. They're like, what are you talking about? Only he saw it. And what?
Unnerving.
And just sits back down. And that's the end.
Yeah. So it's a subtle horror rather than violence. So you don't get that gore and that splatter. It's just what the hell just happened kind of moment. Unexplainable noises, eerie coincidences, encounters with the supernatural or paranormal.
No, man, see, this is where I get the supernatural and the paranoia. The paranormal really is the part that gets me. It's really unfortunate. Here's another one.
Yeah, an extra bonus you get with a lot of those stories is a lingering sense of dread.
This one's weird. So a man's walking down the street and then someone calls out to him. He turns around and there's a man who's half in a hedge.
Half.
He's half in a hedge. And he's like, oi, I'm stuck in a hedge. Can you help me get out of this hedge? The fellow on the street's like, no, and just leaves. And the fellow, the hedge man, just stares at him on his way out.
But the way it's drawn, the guy in the hedge looks terrifying. And apparently the main protagonist who got asked to pull him out of the hedge is I don't want to see what's on the other side of him or whether he's going to get pulled into the hedge, that kind of eerie lens of why did that happen? Did I do the right thing? But something felt wrong here. I think that's something we can all relate to.
So it's almost a moral dilemma. Almost an ethical question. Should you have left the man in the hedge or should you have, called a hedge clipping man? You know what I'm saying? Call someone with a just trim down the hedge a little bit and get him out. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Shaz, is it partly a moral dilemma?
It's not a moral dilemma.
Okay, it's not a moral dilemma at all.
I mean, if you can see the illustration, you can clearly tell that man is abnormal. Like, it's something weird or strange going on with him. The question is, do you want to take the risk to save him and then get in the trap kind of situation? Then now you're gonna be in the hedge.
You might be saying you'll hedge your bets.
This is now double me putting face palming right now. And now I just I get very easily freaked out. So while Shiori was talking, I could hear some sort of voices on my right ear.
What?
And I'm like, where is this coming from? Is this from outside? Where are those voices coming from? Oh no. And I'm already freaking myself out until notice Shiori is holding the headset in her hand and the volume is turned up so high that her own voice was echoing into the headset, which echoed against this wall, which echoed into my ear. And that explains now the eerie noises I was hearing whenever Shiori was speaking. I don't like horror. I become such a scaredy cat.
I'll make some more eerie noises for you. Imagine if you were in bed at night and just started hearing that next to your
Mana mana. You know mana mana? Mana mana.
We had a copyright infringement.
This is just going to break the tension here of the scary.
Body horror. Body horror is actually very interesting.
I think that's something that is so unique to manga as well, because people are just so refined in what they can draw and like how they can distort people's faces and physicalities and stuff. That just
so
you see.
This is manga that revolves around the human body being distorted in some way, and that's a shame we can't show you the images because of copyright and all that kind of thing. But here we have that image. These kids have picked the top off a barrel thingamajig, and inside the barrel is a man's body, except he's all spun around in a giant spiral. It's do you have a better way to describe
the body
this?
parts, yeah. It's like, it's like a cinnamon swirl. It's like
It's
the
like a
body
cinnamon,
is like a full cinnamon swirl with like, distorted eyes
But
and the tongue coming out. And
it's a man.
it used to be a person, body parts.
His hands
gross.
clasped together. That's the center of the circle. And then it goes outwards. You get with his face to go further outwards. His legs. Just awful. But yeah, tell you what, if you did open the bucket to fetch a pail of water and then you saw that would indeed be quite horrendous.
Quite terrifying. It's again the unknown, the uncontrollable, and you don't know why and how that has happened.
Yeah, just, hey, mom and dad, there's a man in the barrel. That's it.
Ooh. Yeah, so rather than monsters, it's people, things that just you don't want to actually see, and I don't know why people would want to watch that for enjoyment.
Shaw's, how is it enjoyable?
I mean, it's fun to look at.
Ow! Oh god. Okay, famous artists.
Shiori's dark interior is being
Very
exposed.
dark. Everyone had like the image of her being like this sweet, cute Japanese girl.
Yep.
She has a dark side there for real, guys.
The dark interior.
Every horror episode so far, the majority of horror episodes, she knew what she was talking
Shiori
about.
knows what's up with the horror, that's for sure.
Oh my god.
So we got some famous artists here to go through. Number one, your mate Kazuo Umezu.
So his art features exaggerated expressions and bizarre character designs.
Yeah, I wish we could show you. This is like a girl's face with a bunch of other faces going inside her face.
Within a face, 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 within a face.
Yeah, he blends a lot of elements of kind of everyday life, but until they're not everyday at all anymore.
It's very surreal, but I think some of this was also maybe connected to the fact that he was a post-World War mangaka, so maybe there was something he had to, work through.
Well, yeah, a little bit of trauma.
Yeah, in the shape of manga. Next one, Junji Ito has.
Ito.
You might have heard sooner or later from Junji Ito. He's kind of famous in the horror world. So.
He made Uzumaki.
That's the guy again. That guy that's a cinnamon swirl.
Yep. Omnibus format, so lots of different stories playing in a universe somewhere.
Tragedies, bizarre phenomena that occur around the cinnamon swirl Uzumaki. It's not a cinnamon swirl, but this is like a swirl. It's things that happen around a high school in a cursed fictional town.
Yep, of Kurouzo City. Kurouzo.
It's the name of the
Black Uzo.
Kurouzu. Kurozu City. Oh, probably a play on words closed city. Kurozu.
Oh,
Could
that's
be.
interesting.
I don't know. Maybe something like that. But apparently it's also been recent use in a homage in Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen.
You can check that out if you're up for a bit of terror.
Terror and horror. And finally, third famous artist is Hideshi Hino.
Yome Hino.
So he's the leading horror artist who expresses bizarre and lyrical words with a unique touch and is popular not only in Japan but also in Western works.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
done a panorama
of hell.
Jugoku Hen.
Yeah. Fantastical horror.
Apocalyptic view of a painter's mental image on hell on earth.
Yeah, so he reckons he's fascinated by the beauty of blood, and he makes confessions about the cursed fate of his own bloodline spanning 3 generations before and after World War II.
And that what makes the story even more eerie is that it's not just about the painter in the story, that also the author says there are autobiographical parts that connect him with the painter. And that's apparently a distinctive feature that he kind of sees things there. Again, makes sense. Because also he's one of the post-World War mangaka, so the darkness is in there as well.
We have an image here, a cover from a manga, of a face with 7 hands tearing the skin off the face. Bit of a smiley face. The face looks like he's having a pretty great time with having his skin peeled off. But then he has other faces who all look like salad fingers popping out of his head.
Yeah, there's a lot of that eeriness in there as well. So those are some of the classics. Is there anything new recently that's like really popular in horror?
There's one horror, again, omnibus short story series called 僕が死ぬだけの百物語. So 5 nights terror stories that leads me to death.
Oh my gosh.
So again, it's like an omnibus. So like each story doesn't have any clear ending. Sometimes it has, but it's just strange things happen in your daily life. The end kind of one.
Such as?
So there's one story about Kakashi scarecrows.
Yeah.
So one boy went to his granddad's house. In the storage, he saw one scarecrow. And he's kind of fascinated about it, and he asked his granddad, "Hey, I saw that. What was that?" And he was like, "I don't know. I don't even know that it's there." So there's strange scarecrow in the storage, and he was kind of fascinated about it, and he kept like visiting the storage.
The storage unit.
A storage unit. Yeah, scarecrow every day. Then on the next day, there was one scarecrow, but then on the next day there was 2.
Oh dear.
And it keeps increasing.
Oh dear.
And then each face kind of looks like the village, like residents, people.
Oh no. Okay.
The end.
Oh, okay. I'm at the end. Okay.
I see. You did expect there to be some kind of voodoo thing happening, where the residents start.
Oh my god.
Something happens to each one of the residents who's represented by a scarecrow, and then the boy has to go and fight the scarecrow lord or something. But no.
Yeah, that's Western style of storytelling, but this one is Japanese horror, so something weird, strange, scary thing is happening, but we don't know who made it, what is made for, or anything.
It's part of the fun speculating on the possibilities of what it could be and how this could happen.
Yes, so it gives like readers some kind of like a space to use their imagination of what's going to happen next.
Okay.
I really don't like stories that are not resolved, because you don't get that satisfaction of like having an explanation or having an ending. It's just loose ends, the end. So you do work your brain more, because you're like, how could this have ended? What was the right thing to do in this situation? What else would I have done? That kind of like, I think that's how it gets so eerie and creepy.
Yeah, but that is the theme of the Japanese horror, I think, because again, we like face so many natural disasters. Like each time is different, and each time we don't know what is the best option to survive.
Right, really.
Until we face the, result.
That's that's interesting, of course. You don't know if it's a big earthquake or a small earthquake or a short one or a long one. Or yes, actually, a great point.
And it also is like, what if it happens when you try to hide or be safe? Or where do you actually go? Was that the right choice you would have gone? And then you hear on the news what happened to those who did the wrong choice, even though they tried to do the right thing. So the horror of like having tried to save yourself or save other people, but actually failing and that kind of stuff is probably also somewhere in there. Woo, this got dark pretty quickly. What's the last Japanese horror you saw?
Oh, I don't know. Like I say, I mean, I try to avoid these terrifying things because I'll get terrified easily. Tell you what, last time it wasn't Japanese. The last time I saw it, it wasn't even a horror. It was just a thriller type disturbing film. And then afterwards, I could not go to the gym at nighttime anymore.
Well, that's uncomfortable.
Because... It's like, as you know, when between midnight and 6 a.m., there's no one there. And normally that's great because you've got freedom to use all the equipment. You can work out. But then I couldn't because I was terrified that the horrendous female characters from the story were going to somehow pop up. And ruin my life.
Psychological horror. I think also like having seen The Ring, I think for a week I was absolutely terrified because they also have like the week countdown, and then if you have any kind of screens in your room, you'll be scared of that. I had to cover all screens in my room.
Really?
Yeah, really? I just could not.
Well, that's good anyway, so just due to feng shui.
Okay, cover the screens in your room. It's better for you anyways. It's
good for your feng shui. You especially don't sleep with one at the end of your bed. That's really bad. A screen or a mirror.
Oh yeah, I heard that too. Well, guess that's a thing to not do. But yeah, happy Halloween,
Happy
guys.
Halloween! I hope you will enjoy cosplaying. Hope you will enjoy trick or treating. Shibuya Halloween still shut down?
It is probably still not allowed.
Don't go to Shibuya.
But if you have some Japanese horror stories you have maybe read, watched, or seen somewhere, let us know in the comments down below if there's any kind of recommendations you have.
And remember, don't stalk.
And don't haunt.
Don't stalk. Don't haunt. Can I tell you a story from my actual life about it's about just an unnerving situation? Oh no! Again, it involves the gym. Maybe I should just write a series of like horror mangas called Haunted Gym.
The Haunted Gym. Okay, episode 1.
So here's what happens, right? So there's my gym, and I ride there on my bicycle, and I park the bicycle, and then there's a house right next to the gym, right? And then the house has a window sitting right here. And when you park your bike, you look straight out the window. Always the curtain is drawn, yeah? But the house has a cat. It has a white, fluffy cat. And this cat will just sit in between the curtain and the window pane and just eyeball me.
I know this would feel so much more scary, but I'm saying this in the most caring way possible. You already told this story on this podcast.
Oh, did I?
Yes, you did.
That cat's a pervert. That cat is such a pervert, but this is exactly the same as Japanese horror. There's no resolution. It's just a horrendous thing that happens in my life, and I'm expected to deal with it. I don't know why. There's no reason. There's no way to deal with this pervert cat. I just have to be a victim. Yeah. I'm a victim.
Clearly, this cat has traumatized Ladybeard beyond control at this point in time. You watch out for yourself.
When else did I tell the cat story?
You told that before the podcast. I don't know which episode.
Before the podcast? It wasn't on the podcast. In the podcast? Oi, someone make a compilation of me telling the pervert cat story. Please.
All right. You guys have a wonderful Halloween.
Yes.
And we'll catch you soon with another episode of Cat with Beards. Bye-bye.